There was nothing so safe or so special about us that could disconnect us from a country that is violent and is founded in a racism that is still with us today in 2019. A violence and a racism welcomed out into the open by President Donald Trump and directed at our community. 22 killed in a Walmart on the Saturday before school started by a gentleman who had an AK-47, a weapon designed for war, to kill people as effectively, as efficiently, in as great a number as possible. And that's exactly what he did, fueled by that hatred and that racism directed by this president. Weeks later, we found ourselves in Canton and Forest, Mississippi, the sites of the largest single-state ICE raid in the history of this country. Those communities of immigrants working in chicken processing plants, one of the toughest, shittiest jobs available in the United States of America, rounded up like animals, separated from their kids, all of this done in all of our names. And in Pacific Junction, in this state, meeting with those in a community that had never meaningfully flooded before this year, to learn that every single one of their homes was underwater, to visit with farmers who the stored soybeans in their bins burst the sides as they soaked up the water, unable to find markets that have been closed to them by this president. For better or for worse, we are connected to climate change. We are connected to these disastrous trade policies. We are connected to the violence and racism in this country. But for better, we are all connected to one another and to the solutions. The people of El Paso, Texas, are the ones who gave me voice to say, hell yes, we're gonna buy back every AR-15 and AK-47 in this country, to get those off the streets and out of our homes so that no one ever has to fear that again. And people will ask us, they'll say, hey, Beto, aren't you afraid that you've gone too far, that you've really pissed off the NRA this time? I'm not afraid of that. No, I'm not afraid of that. I would be afraid if I were a school teacher in the kindergarten classroom, and those kids for whom I'd already sacrificed so much were up against a gunman with an AR-15 because we didn't have the courage to stop him while we still had time. I would be afraid if I were the son of an immigrant who went to work early this morning and never came back, detained and deported back to a country he had not seen for 20 years. I would be afraid if I were one of those farmers here in Iowa who had seen those markets closed to me, unable to get out of debt or to pass that farm on to my daughter or to my son. I would be afraid if I was a trans woman of color who could be killed with complete impunity in this country right now with no one to follow up or investigate. I would be afraid if I had to drive 300 miles to make my own decisions about my own body, to find a safe, legal abortion or a cervical cancer screening or family planning help because we've closed down the family planning clinics in my state. I would be afraid if my sons were black and were stopped by the police in a country that has refused to ensure there's accountability for the abuse of power and the deaths of young black men who were not armed and posed no threat to this country. Then I would be afraid. But for all of those who live in fear in this country, we as Democrats must decide we will not be afraid. We as Americans must decide we will not be afraid. We must decide that we will free America from fear. And that means no fear as we rewrite this country's immigration laws to reflect what this country looks like, to legalize our fellow Americans, starting with more than 1 million dreamers and make them U.S. citizens in this, their true home country. No fear as we pursue universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care, and that means primary health care, and that means in Iowa, 51st in mental health care, no copays to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or be treated so that you're well enough to live to your full potential. Universal health care that means every woman makes her own decisions about her own body and has access to the care that makes it happen. No fear about confronting climate change before it is too late. Putting farmers and rural communities here in Iowa in the driver's seat, getting behind the regenerative agricultural practices that they are already pioneering, paying them for the environmental services that they want to provide. Every single one of us doing all we can, meeting this threat not with half measures or half steps, but with the entire country to ensure that this planet is one that we can pass on to our kids and every generation that follows. No fear about ending a war on drugs that has become a war on people, and some people specifically in a country that has 2.3 million Americans behind bars, the largest prison population on the face of the planet, disproportionately comprised of people of color. We will end the prohibition on marijuana. We will expunge the arrest records for everyone caught in possession of marijuana, and we will make sure that we close for-profit prisons, end cash bail in America, do the right thing while we still can. And because a young man named Henry came up to me while I was approaching the stage and said, "Beto, I sure hope you're going to talk about Puerto Rico. I want to make sure that we follow the people of Puerto Rico. Whatever they want to do, whether it is independence or statehood, we're going to get behind them and make sure that they're treated with the respect and the dignity and have the power that they deserve as our fellow human beings and our fellow Americans." This is how we free ourselves from fear. We decide what we believe in, and we fight like hell to achieve it. And we don't let anyone, whether it's the NRA or the corporations or the political action committees or even our fellow Democrats, tell us what is possible and what is not possible. We, the people, decide what is possible in this country. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how we defeat Donald Trump in November of 2020. That is how we bring a deeply divided country back together again. Are you with me on this? Let me hear you say, hell yes. Hell yes. You with me on this? Hell yes. I'm with you, America. I'm with you, Iowa. Let's go out and do this. Thank you very much. Les agradezco y nos vemos. Thank you, Iowa. Gracias. Thank you very much. Gracias.